It's Ash from SuperVideos back for another video for the Walking Dead universe. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at a hypothetical theory in the Walking Dead universe that could have changed the course of the show. We're going to talk about what if Negan killed Maggie instead of Glenn? How would that have impacted the story? And would Glenn have been able to forgive Negan and even work with him like Maggie has been able to at the end of the original show, and like she will probably do in the Walking Dead spin-off Dead City? We're gonna break down the possibilities and explore whether Negan would have been able to get the same redemption arc like he has gotten. So stay tuned, we'll be right back to break this down. Alright, as always, before we dive into it, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. With that said, let's dive right into it. To understand whether Glenn could have forgiven Negan and worked with him, we need to examine Glenn's character first. Glenn was a kind-hearted person who always tried to see the best in people, and his forgiving nature allowed him to take risks and form alliances. However, Glenn's emotions often got the best of him, as seen when he rushed to the aid of Maggie during the governor's assault on the prison, nearly sacrificing his own life in the process. So we have seen Glenn kind of do things in an extreme manner just because it involved Maggie specifically. I feel like Glenn was more rational when it involved people that weren't in his immediate family, but things definitely took a turn when things involved his own family. And this is very apparent in the way that he dealt with the Nicholas situation, because he forgave him and then tried to save him, even though Nicholas tried to kill him earlier. So we definitely saw two sides of Glenn. One side that was kind of blind when it came to his family, immediate family, and the side that was more forgiving and kind of took chances when it didn't necessarily involve his family. It might have involved him, but not his family. If Negan had killed Maggie instead of Glenn, it's hard to say whether Glenn would have been able to forgive him. Maggie and Glenn had a strong connection, and her loss would have been devastating to him. On the other hand, like I said, Glenn was always willing to put his life on the line for others, and he may have seen working with Negan as a way to prevent further deaths, and that might have been ultimately what led to Glenn being able to work with Negan like Maggie has been able to. But I doubt that it would have been quite the same, and I don't think that there would be quite an understanding between them like there is with Negan and Maggie. Well, sort of, but you know what I mean. But ultimately, Glenn's decision would have depended on how much he valued the lives of his group members over his own personal feelings. Even though, even with Maggie, she goes off script a little bit in terms of not really sticking to her own decisions, only because she can't get her personal feelings out of the way and try to work with Negan to save the lives of her group members. But ultimately, we saw that she was able to do that for the most part by the end of the series. Now let's talk about Negan. Negan's redemption arc was directly linked to how Glenn died and how he wasn't able to meet his son. The loss of Glenn and the pain he caused Maggie was a catalyst for Negan to reflect on his actions and ultimately seek redemption. And obviously, things came full circle when we had Negan sacrificing himself, or choosing to sacrifice himself to save the lives of the survivors when it came to the Commonwealth situation, only to be backstabbed by the Commonwealth and the man in charge of the Commonwealth military at that point, bringing his pregnant wife into the picture and wanting the two of them to be executed at the same time. And obviously, as Negan told Maggie, it was at that point where he knew what Maggie was feeling. And obviously, if things were not the same, if Negan had killed Maggie, a pregnant Maggie, this scene wouldn't have really worked the same way, obviously. But if Negan had killed Maggie instead of Glenn, the story could have gone in a different direction. that might have ultimately ended up in the same place, but it would have took longer and there would have been a lot more ups and downs in the process. Fans have theorized that Negan could have become more ruthless and heartless after, if he had killed Maggie and her unborn child. And it would have taken him longer to really come to a conclusion that he was in the wrong, like we saw back when he was still in the prison cell, when he opened up to Maggie in the prison cell. Killing an innocent woman and her unborn child would have been a major turning point in Negan's character development. However, some fans have argued that Negan could have still found a way to redeem himself. Negan's charisma and charm could have won Glenn's trust over, obviously if Maggie died instead of Glenn, and he could have used his position of power to protect the people and prevent further bloodshed. But like I said, it all comes down to whether Glenn would have been able to put the past behind him like Maggie has been able to for the most part. Another important factor to consider here is how the other members of the group would have reacted to Negan killing Maggie instead of Glenn. Maggie's death would have left a significant void in the group, and her loss, especially because she was pregnant, would have hit the group hard. Rick and others might not have been as willing to work with Negan and would have instead sought revenge against Negan for Maggie's death. And if that happened, all that war would have happened right away instead of a gap, and obviously there would have been a lot more casualties, and it might have changed Negan for the worse because there wouldn't have been enough time for him to kind of reflect on what he's done and even meet the people he met along the way to change his mindset, like Carl and Sasha and people like that. So at the end of the day, if Negan killed Maggie instead, more people could have turned against Negan, even from his own camp, because they believed that he had gone too far by killing a pregnant woman. And that would have had its own twist that would have changed the direction of the story. Another thing that we do need to consider is whether a Walking Dead city would have even been possible if Maggie was killed instead of Glenn. Because, like we know now, the Walking Dead city's plot revolves around Herschel Jr. being captured and Negan and Maggie working together to find him. But if Maggie died with her unborn child, there would have been no Herschel Jr., which means that there wouldn't have been any common thing to bring Negan and Glenn in that case together for a Dead City to happen. There would have been a different story, there would have been a different twist, and it might not really have worked because it doesn't really involve the two characters. If they did something, it might have been something regarding someone else, but it wouldn't have had the same impact. But in conclusion, if Negan had killed Maggie instead of Glenn, it would have had a profound impact on the story of The Walking Dead. Glenn's forgiving nature might have allowed him to work with Negan, but it's hard to say for sure, and if I'm being honest, I think it wouldn't have been the same. I don't think Glenn would have forgiven Negan like Maggie forgave Negan. If you think Maggie is being hard on Negan and kind of taking too long to forgive him, it would have been way worse if it was Glenn and Negan. Also, like I said, Negan's redemption arc might have gone significantly different if he had killed a pregnant woman instead of a man. Ultimately, the decision to keep Glenn alive might have allowed for a more complex and interesting story, but the possibilities of what could have happened are endless. What do you think? Would the show have been better or worse if Negan had killed Maggie instead of Glenn? So share that in the comment section below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video.